All right, we're gonna get started. So happy Friday afternoon. We've made it through another week, so that's pretty exciting. So this is one of Elevate Rapid City's virtual trainings. We're glad you're here today. The series of trainings are being offered that cover everything from health insurance, mental health, marketing to business resources. I would be in the business resource category. If you missed a training, you can find previous webinars on the Elevate Rapid City YouTube channel. And you can also view upcoming webinars on the Elevate Rapid City Facebook page. Okay, I think that is my formal introduction that I'm supposed to do, very formally. So before we get started, I'll tell you a little bit about myself. So I'm Manke. I'm the COO and head of training for Rose Group International. We are a business headquartered and currently quarantined to Spearfish, South Dakota. And we do business consulting for organizations about team dynamics, culture, communication, executive succession planning, training, all that people-y stuff. So we definitely help you with the people. And right now, the big challenge around human beings, besides all of the normal stuff, is that we've all been sent off to our respective homes for the most part, and told to work from there until further notice, or some people are not working remotely, while some are working remotely, so that has a dynamic all its own within one organization. So I'm going to talk about that a little bit today. Let's see. Oh, some housekeeping. I'll be with you for the next half hour, walking through some of this stuff that we'll be talking about today. If you have questions, feel free to please put them in the chat. You guys have already used it, so I know you know how. So I will expect questions because I'm super excited about engaging with other human beings, especially in this setting. So please ask me questions. So you can put those in the chat. I will look at them as best I can while I'm talking, but human brain can't do two things at once. I suffer from that. So my intention is to save all the questions till the end. But if you'll just put them in there as we go so that you don't forget your questions, that will be awesome. We're not going to use the Q&A, so don't confuse the Q&A button with the chat button. Please use the chat button because the Q&A thing seems way harder than it needs to be. So yeah, I'm going to talk for about a half an hour and then we'll do questions. We have a full hour. We may not use it unless you ask me some really awesome questions that I get to answer. And then when we're done, you can watch the video 100 more times and get your questions answered over and over again, or not, whatever you want to do for your Friday afternoon. So thank you, first of all, or second of all, or fifth of all by now, to Rapid City Elevate for having me be part of this virtual training so that we can share what we do and hopefully help and support some of you folks that are going through kind of these crazy times and not only navigating your own emotions and your own thoughts and your own responsibilities, but also as leaders helping and navigating other people through this. So really excited for the opportunity. Today, I'm going to be talking about balancing accountability and empathy in a remote work setting. And I guess the title is During a Crisis. We are, in fact, in a crisis. I don't like to use crisis language because I think it invokes fear and stress and anxiety. But that's the title that we gave it. So balancing accountability and empathy during a crisis. Here's a pro tip for you. It's always important to balance accountability and empathy, not just during a crisis. So I hope that you carry this forward when things are not in a crisis mode. 5 things we're going to talk about. I'm kind of big on having lists and so you can keep track of your thoughts. Rachel, my business partner, not so much. You may have already tuned into her episode she did on Wednesday. Yes, it was on Wednesday. If you didn't, you can check it out on the Rapid City Elevate's YouTube channel. So the 5 topics, 5 high points we're going to cover today. Give grace, be transparent. Communicate too much until you find a norm. The G.S.D triangle, that's reflect plus anchor plus act equals G.S.D, which is get stuff done. It's not how it says it in our book, but you understand what I'm getting at. Positive language is number 4. And number 5 is celebrate wins. So, okay, we're going to start with leading effectively through a crisis. So the first thing you need to do and really think about when you're leading through a crisis is yourself, your own reaction. What things do you need to organize, sort out, reflect on, help yourself get through? Who do you need to talk to? In which direction of the wind do you need to scream your grievances? It's really important that we really think about who is in the mirror. To quote the late Michael Jackson, the man in the mirror. Really think about who's in the mirror and how we're reacting to what's going on around us before we can think about what's happening for other people and help them manage through it. So be very genuine and gentle with yourself and really level with what's going on day to day. And that's the second point I have is expect waves. Even those of us who have built a career in helping other people manage through crisis and change and chaos and crazy stuff have days. If you don't believe me, you can ask any of the people in my life. I have days. I just had a day yesterday. And so it's really important to know that you're going to have waves. You're going to have days of, oof, this is all going to be okay for my business or for my people or for my family or for me. And then you're going to have days where you think that you are forever going to be managing this crisis. I actually posted in our IX Ambassador group on Facebook, which you should go out and join if you haven't yet. Our IX Ambassador page, we always do a tell us how your week was. And I put up a GIF of Bill Murray in Groundhog's Day. Like, oh, hey, it's Groundhog's Day again. That's kind of how I felt this whole week. I'm sure you guys can all relate. So be real with yourself, expect waves of emotions, waves of even how you think you might do something. And we'll talk a little bit about how some people have more waves and how we're going to do things in a minute. But always it's, well, let's try this way. And then that might not work for a week. Then we try another thing. And so there's going to be a lot of pivoting. And with pivoting comes emotions. So be ready to deal with those. And then, you know, once you've had an opportunity to really kind of level with yourself, probably right now, that's on a daily basis, think about how you're going to be positive about your business with your people. As leaders, as colleagues, our job right now, our diligence to each other is to really help each other through this and support each other through it. And being negative or about your business is not going to help. Now, I'm not saying you don't get to be stressed out or that you don't get to be anxious about what's happening. I'm not even saying that you can't be full on freaked out. You can be, but as leaders and as colleagues in an organization, it's really important to not use that kind of language when you talk about your business. That's probably the first most important rule, and frankly, the one that'll get you all through it. You know, and then I think another thing that's really important, I've heard a lot of people being worried or stressed, anxious about this. As a leader, if your business is doing well right now, you shouldn't feel guilty about that. Now, again, I can't tell you how to feel, but I'm gonna. So if your business is actually being successful right now or finding even more success or business is ramping up, don't think of that as looking around and saying, oh my gosh, I feel guilty. I don't want to talk to anybody about this. Find groups of people who are also finding success or looking for it and talk to them about it. You shouldn't feel guilty because really basic economics and the way recessions work, I mean, a lot of things tank, but some things still survive. And those things that survive in an economy are the ones that hold the economy through as a foundation until we can get back on our feet. And so it's really important that you find people to talk to as leaders, business owners, whoever you need it to be, to say, hey, yeah, we're doing good too. And we've got good things going on. It's just really important to maintain that positive attitude. So if you have good things going on, find people to share that with. This is one that I'm not sure. I think it's important to do this based on the culture of your business. So I think maintaining appropriate levels of professionalism is important. It's kind of easy to, well, gosh, I'm in my home office and maybe I don't even have real pants on because nobody can see it anyways. I might not have makeup on, or I do have makeup on, but I put it on special just for you guys. But you might not do the normal things you would do if you went to work. So it's easy to kind of fall, like your language might fall into not so professional. And of course, there's all the sort of blooper videos out there about kids walking through a meeting or dogs barking and all that happening. And that happens and everybody understands it. But I think as leaders, it's important to maintain professionalism, whether that's, you actually keep an agenda for meetings that you have, or make sure you're dressing, at least from the top down, the way you normally would at work. Also using the same kind of language that you would at work, because that makes people feel more comfortable that things haven't changed altogether completely. Like, yeah, we threw the baby out with the bathwater. We don't even have to act the same anymore. So maintaining professionalism is really important for your own mind space and also for the people on your team. Okay, so the next thing I want to spend some time talking about is managing the frustration mindset, and how do you handle it sort of for yourself, and what kinds of things can you do to help your people not be thinking always about the frustration, what I call the frustration mindset. So I have something to share with you on my screen. Again, can't do two things at once, so I'm have to switch over to this if you'll give me just a moment. Okay, here we are. Share screen, this one. Okay, can you all see my screen? Oh, I see the chat going. I'm gonna guess that's a yes. Yay, okay, cool. Thanks, guys. Okay, so managing the frustration mindset. So there are moments that we all get frustrated or freaked out or stressed or anxious or maybe even excited about the fact that your business is doing well, right? So there's all these emotions floating around, but the frustration part of it, maybe we're frustrated with the people we're working with because they don't call into the Zoom calls that we're all supposed to call into, or maybe they won't shut up when they're on the Zoom call, or maybe they keep trying to share their screen and you don't really care what they're trying to share. Like, there's so many things that can frustrate us normally, and then this situation is not normal. So I have a few tips to share with you. Before I share those, I want to talk a little bit about how and when people can hear you. And I don't mean like, can you hear me now, the Verizon guy? I mean, actually, when they can psychologically process you trying to tell them something. So that's why I brought up what's on the screen now. This is the Kurtz change transition model. And you'll see where this is normal, right? So this is like in January sometime, and then this is February, and then things just went downhill from there. And so we're somewhere, some of us are still in what we call decline as far as dealing with a change, managing through a change. People who are in decline very often can't hear you. They can't process what you're saying to them. And so you might feel like, gosh, I told Susan 17 times to do this, do this, do this, and she's not listening to me. How hard is it to hear what I'm saying to you? It's not because Susan's ignoring you. It's not because she's at home and thinks, nah, 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 I don't have to listen to you. It's because she's still in decline phase, trying to process information. And that's why it's really hard for her to hear what you're trying to say. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen so you can see my face. So keeping that in mind, I wanted to show you that to frame up kind of the rest of what I'm going to talk about with this managing the frustration mindset, because I would imagine I'll get to the end of this and some of you will say, yeah, that sounds cute and all, Meg, but I got people who still aren't going to listen to me no matter what, and I don't know what's going on. I think it's probably because they're at home and they don't care. So remember, it's not that they're home and they don't care, or they're freaked out and they don't care. It's never that they don't care. It's that they care a whole bunch and they don't really know what to do with it. or how to manage it. And so they have a lot of anxiety going on, so they can't hear your suggestions. So first thing with managing the frustration mindset, be very clear and be very transparent. And that, I'm talking transparency from as much as you can be business transparent about, that's not business confidential, things that you can share, all the way to how you're feeling that day. It's important for leaders to look a little, to appear a little bit vulnerable, because that makes people trust you, because you seem human, that you're going through the same things they are. So while you still have to have this positive outlook, it's okay for you to have days where you can say, gosh, I didn't sleep good last night, or my stomach is in knots because whatever the things are. So being transparent about yourself and about your business as much as possible is really important. Also being clear about a few things. What you estimate might happen, even if you don't know. If you think probably you can assume something will happen or a certain timeline is going to be followed, let your people know that. Also, be very clear about what your expectations are. We're going to talk more in a little bit about how people are thinking about expectations based on some of their tendencies with their culture types. So a few things that are going to help. Think about the things that you didn't know, like say 2 or 3 weeks ago, or maybe even a month ago. And if thinking about that in midst of this crisis or what's going on with all of the COVID-19 stuff seems like I can't even get my brain around it yet, think about a different situation that you've been through in the past, some new information that's been brought into your world, and think about what questions you had before you had the information enough to feel comfortable. Now imagine that every time something changes or every time you make a new decision in your business, your people are at that new spot where they don't have enough information. So if you sort of work through this exercise in your own brain about some of the changes and challenges you've been through in the last 2 to 3 weeks, you might find a few spots where there's a gap in information where you thought, oh shoot, we didn't really tell our people that X, Y, and Z was going to happen, or we didn't really give them a timeline. We said, well, kind of sort of it might be this, which is okay, but maybe we could now give them a timeline. So really think about when you were uncomfortable, what questions you had, and make sure that you've bridged the gap between what you know in your brain, what you know on your management and leadership team, and what you've told your people, because that's usually where there's some sort of miscommunication in change. So email follow-ups are really good. Now you've got chaos tolerant people in your world who are not going to read your emails. I happen to be one of those people. Sometimes our GM can attest to that. So it's always important to send them. I saw a pie chart the other day that I posted on LinkedIn that talked about like what people are actually thinking about while they're in a Zoom call or in a video conference. And it was like 2% are actually paying attention to what's going on in the meeting. Some people are checking out everybody else's house. Some people are thinking about what they're going to make for dinner. Some people are trying to make sure that their kids don't walk in the office. So email follow-ups are a great way to make sure that people get the information that you want them to get. Now, if you are chaos tolerant and sending emails and setting agendas and sharing information is not your bailiwick, that might be a kind of a too bad. You're going to have to manage through that right now because this is what your people need you to do. Ask for repeats for clarification. So if you're on a call that's not 15 people, maybe one person or 2 people, or if you're talking specifically to one person, you could say, hey, Meg, tell me what you heard. I want to make sure I was clear. You don't have to make it about them. You don't have to say, I think you weren't paying attention, or I heard your kid screaming in the background before you got the mute button hit. You can just say, I want to make sure I was clear. So have people repeat stuff back to you. You can do that with your email follow-ups too. Say, if I've missed anything in what we talked about that in the minutes that I'm sending out after our meeting, please let me know. That way people are confirming that, yes, I looked through this, I read it, or I hear you, or I understand what your expectations are. What's next? We have heard Rachel and I have heard kind of everything from, you know, we're having a stand up every day for 5 minutes with our whole team to we meet once a week, boy, whether we need it or not, via Zoom or some other video conferencing. I would say you'll have people kind of across the spectrum of, you know, folks who are team driven. They're really looking for that opportunity to connect, all the way to people who are self-driven, who are perfectly happy to finally get to work from home and not have to engage with people every day. So depending on our own tendencies, we can kind of fall into one of those traps, like over meeting or under meeting. I think what I've heard more of, and I will say I'm self-driven, so I'm more in the fan of not too many meetings camp. But I will say what I think I've heard more of is people not probably meeting enough. And here's the way that I've been thinking about it. If on average, we're around people that we work with 10 hours a day for 5 days a week, that's 50 hours that we're spending with these people. And now, even though we're emailing back and forth and maybe having a few random phone calls throughout the day to answer questions, if you only have 1 hour, maybe not even 1 hour of video meeting a week, you've just cut 49 hours of engagement out of everyone's, out of your culture, really. So that's a lot. That's a big culture change. So even 5 hours, even if you did an hour a day, which seems like, what the heck are we going to talk about for an hour every morning or every afternoon? Even if you only did, 5 hours a week, you've still cut 45 hours of engagement out of your culture. So I would say what I would recommend is at least 3 times a week, get your whole team together and encourage people to be communicating with each other the way they need to, whether that's video calls or phone calls or Slack or emails, whatever it is. Encourage them to be communicating. You can't be communicating enough right now. And then provide factual resources. There's so much information floating around out there right now about what's going on in the world. Sometimes because it's hard for people to hear what's going on, sometimes the best thing you can do is keep sending them information that you know is factual from a reputable source, right? And if they see you as someone who they can trust, someone who would make good judgment calls or only share stuff that was true and great, they will trust what you send them. And that will help alleviate some of their anxiety. We've been even telling people, if you're really stressed out, stop being on Facebook so much, maybe right now, because you just see thing after thing after thing of, and even if it's not negative, it's, I'm at home with my kids and I'm this and I'm that and doing, my life has changed and it's not normal. Some people don't really deal well with change, or they don't like the feeling of change. So seeing people constantly talking about it, even that makes some people anxious. So provide factual data to your people whenever you can, as much as possible. If you think that it would be better that you provided none because you don't want to appear to have some political stance or whatever, that's totally your choice. But if you have somebody who's just really they seem like they're just grabbing information from everywhere and they can't make sense of any of it, maybe providing them a single source of information, CDC's website, the WHO's website, will help them sort of calm down what they got going on in their brain. The next thing we're going to talk about is the G.S.D triangle. And so the G.S.D triangle is, I have a picture of it. I will share my screen. This one. So the G.S.D triangle is in our book. And it talks about 4 really important things. GSD stands for, again, get stuff done. That's not how it says in the book, but you get me. So the 4 things that are really important are passion, energy, anchor, and action. Passion and energy you should be thinking about right now in the sense of what makes me passionate and what gives me energy. But not just that. We would give that advice all the time. Because this is a tool that we use a lot. What I would say right now is start reflecting on the things that now make you passionate or now provide you energy. They may be different than they were 3 weeks, 4 weeks ago. You know, why are you passionate about what you're doing? Or what are you passionate about? Maybe right now you're not feeling so passionate about your business because you're just kind of feeling down in the dumps. Well, what are you feeling passionate about? What makes you feel motivated and happy and fulfilled inside? And then what's bringing you energy? If it used to be going to the gym and now it can't be going to the gym, what is it? Is it spending time with your family? Is it walking your dog? So really reflect on the things that are bringing you passion and energy. And then making sure you anchor in something or someone that reminds you every day as sort of a foundation why you're doing what you're doing with your business. Why do you feel good about it? Why do you want to keep doing it? Why do you wake up in the morning and think about it? Why do you not sleep at night and think about it? What is your anchor? Is it a spouse? Is it a brother, sister, a friend, a coworker, a co-founder? Is it your whole family? Is it a strategic plan that you've put together? What makes you, what is the thing or the person or the group of people that when you're feeling really crummy and you kind of poke your head up and you think, I don't remember why I'm doing this. What have you anchored in? So really think about what your anchor is and then taking action. And right now we kind of all feel a little hamstrung, like we can't take action some days because it's like, well, I can't do this thing or I can't go meet with that person. Really think about what ways can you act. And all of this with the G.S.D triangle will really help you start to think positively. So you're helping, or you're sharing a positive message with your workforce, and it will seem more genuine to you if you can get your G.S.D triangle sorted out for yourself. And then you won't feel like, oh yeah, everything is just great. We're all so happy here and everything's going to be just fine. You can start to say, well, you know what, here's why I think it's going to be fine. Because I'm passionate about X. This brings me energy, even in this new environment. I'm anchoring in these things for our business. And these are the actions we're going to take going forward. So it gives you a platform for the message you're going to share with your people about why they should be maintaining a positive outlook. Okay, so then the next thing is the words you say and how you say them and to whom are you saying them. So I'll talk really briefly, yes, really briefly, about the 4 culture types in our world. And those 4 culture types, can't do 2 things at once. Rachel talked about those on Wednesday. And so here they are: fixer, independent, stabilizer, and organizer. Rachel talked about them probably a little bit more than I'm going to. So if you want more information, you should reference her video on Rapid City Elevate's YouTube channel. But what I'll say is there are people who are team driven. So on this side, we've got fixers and stabilizers who are team driven. And then as we move to our right, we have people who are independents and organizers, and they are self-driven. Now, self-driven people are more inclined to an environment like this where there's remote work because they prefer an opportunity to process information and think on their own, sans team decision-making and collaboration. And so they might feel like they're kind of grooving on this thing. You might feel like, where did you go? Have you been working? I mean, I'm getting your emails, but I haven't like actually spoken to you in a week. Self-driven people. Team-driven people are like, when can we have a Zoom call again? Should we have a Zoom call again? Do you think it's safe to meet? Maybe if we meet in a park and we're all 6 feet apart, that would be fine. And I'll bring hand sanitizer for everybody. I already made like loads of it, right? So team-driven people like to collaborate in a group. They like to decide in a group. They like to just see how people are doing. And then we've got chaos tolerant at the top. I guess I could do this so you can see this. Chaos tolerant at the top, down to order tolerant towards the bottom. Now those chaos tolerant people, even in a time like this, they're not like, yahoo, this is some crazy, exciting new change in crisis, and we're excited about it. They're not excited in that sense. They're excited to find solutions to problems, and fixers want to help people feel better. Independents want to solve problems. So those chaos tolerant people are probably more open to suggestions and thinking about how do we solve this idea of remote work right now, or some people work remotely and some people don't, or we are out of face masks, or whatever the case is. Order tolerant folks, stabilizers and organizers, are really more interested in order and organization, and not so much the innovation and how are we going to fix this. They're like, you give me a checklist of the things that we need to do right now, and I will make sure that they get done. I'm not interested in all your willy-nilly, let's be innovative and think of 3 new solutions. If we have a solution that will probably work, we should use it. So that's a little bit about our 4 culture types, and that's important because I want to talk a little bit about the accountability loop and the victim loop, and the way people will act and interact with the positive words that you use. So, still sharing my screen, yes. So this is the accountability loop on the top, and on the bottom is the victim loop. A lot of times we find ourselves in the victim loop, especially if we're in change, crisis, or chaos. Those words that are in the victim loop are the kinds of words or the kinds of language you hear yourself or other people use if you're freaked out, anxious, not feeling comfortable about your environment. The words up here in the accountability loop are words that, well, frankly, we rarely hear anyone use because it's not our nature to be accountable first. So in order to practice that and really infuse that into your culture, and because we can't necessarily impact people with our body language or by sitting down one-on-one in an office and talking, we have to get really, really good with our words. And so we want to use more positive words. So things like I recognize, or I'm going to own that, or you know what, for saying forgive, but you know what, I understand you didn't make it to that meeting because you were changing a diaper, or God, whatever the things are. I understand. Let's have a catch-up meeting. Or forgiving yourself if you goof something up. Self-examination, reflection, writing it down, sending follow-up emails. That is really important. That helps people build trust. Learning and then taking action. So if you think about words that are associated with those actions or those action words, you can start to build more positive language into the way you speak about things getting done. That will encourage other people in your organization to do the same thing. And then you will start to hear the conversations in your organization change. And it'll be more about people owning their actions, people owning different parts of a project, people giving others a little bit more grace and saying, hey, you know what, I understand. Let's push the project, completion date out, or I'll do this thing so that we get it done on time. We don't have to move the date. So you'll start to hear different language if you start to encourage this language. Some things we don't want to say, words associated with ignoring, denying, blaming, it's not my fault, rationalizing, well, really it was because, resisting a conversation, do we really need to talk about it? And then kind of hiding from things. Those are any kind of thoughts or words associated with those actions or things we want to avoid. Then the reason that I went through our 4 culture types, which are on this screen too, are just to give you a little thought around is sometimes if you seem too positive or seem too happy or optimistic about things, so if you start using some of this accountability or positive or optimistic language, some people who are order tolerant, who maybe haven't had it, they're still in that decline phase where they can't hear what's going on, they haven't finished processing information, they're going to think that you are being maybe careless, or why don't you care about what's going on? You seem like this is not a big deal. Okay, so thinking about helping those folks, those order tolerant folks, stabilizers and organizers, if you hear or feel language like that from them, it's because they don't have enough information yet. So you need to sit down and visit with them, sit down in a video call, I guess, and visit with them a little bit about how they're feeling and what they're going through, and what questions they haven't had answered yet. Ask them what's making them feel anxious. And there might be some necessity for one-on-one conversations with some people, because there might be some people who are like, if you did it in a group, they're like, what what are we talking about again? And some people are like, oh my God, I have so many questions, but I don't want to ask in the group. So really, if you can identify some people who are a little bit defensive where normally they wouldn't be, or maybe they have been defensive in the past, and then you remember, oh yeah, it was because they had all these questions or things that they were uncertain about and we didn't answer their questions. That's what's happening for them right now also. So when you start to use this accountability language, really think about what the potential culture types are. If you don't already know what the culture types are for your people, think about what their potential culture types are and why they're reacting the way they are to things. And you can really help them be more comfortable with what's going on in their head. Celebrate wins. Celebrate wins. Wins are so important right now. I have a girlfriend in Virginia. She has a big fancy job. She's in internal accounting. She's wicked smart. She also has 2 wonderful little boys, 2.5 and 4. And the 2.5-year-old Liam is learning to potty train, which is, for any of you who have kids, is welcome, but a little bit frustrating when you're on Zoom calls for 8 hours a day and your husband is still mandated to work at his facility where he's supposed to work as a GM. So she called me and was like, man, I changed wet pants while I was on a Zoom call, an international Zoom call. She's like, I feel like I'm not doing good at anything at all. And I said, well, hey, let's think about what are some of the wins here. Liam is trying to potty train. So pretty soon, this is her last kiddo, I think. So pretty soon, you're not going to have to do diaper bags anymore. That is a freaking win. That I get excited about that. That is a win. How about this? You're so cool. You can be changing diapers and be an international presence in a huge company all at once. Not many people could say that. So really think about the things that are going well in your life, share those with people, and things that are going well in your business, and share those things with each other. It might be tiny little things. It could be something like, hey, we got through the whole day and had a bunch of Zoom calls and none of them crashed. Or we didn't have anybody hack our Zoom calls and draw inappropriate things on people's faces. Like, it might be really small things. We have to start thinking about what wins we can celebrate right now. It is so important to keep doing that. That is how we're going to stay motivated and keep going forward. Okay, I got to the end and we still have time for questions, and we have questions. So I'm going to open this up so I can read these. I'm going to make sure. Okay, there's that. Got it. Oh, okay. All right, so I'm going to scroll up here. All right. First question. Okay, I am finding that some of my instructors are taking direction well, but they seem to have gotten off track. I would love tips for keeping people focused on an outcome that moves us forward. Okay, great. So I would love tips for keeping people focused on an outcome that moves us forward. Okay, so the people who are getting off track very likely are chaos tolerant. And so could be, probably. There could be some folks that are order tolerant too and are freaked out. But if these are your people who are pretty flexible, open to change, adaptable, they don't get too wrapped around the axle if you change something sort of ad hoc, then they're probably chaos tolerant. And so what they're probably doing is thinking, I'm doing this right now. Not right now, but like in this current environment. Let's see, after I get done, I'm gonna get my seeds to plant my garden, and I'm gonna add onto my garden, and I'm gonna paint my office, and I'm gonna go for a run. And I'm still kind of paying attention, and I'm with you. I want to do the things that we say we're going to do, but I'm thinking about all this other stuff. And because I'm in my house, where all that other stuff happens, it becomes even more distracting. So one thing I would say, if you're dealing with some folks that are getting a little off track, is give them a piece of what success looks like, or what goal you have. And so instructors, I'm assuming probably you're in, maybe this new message is from you, Stephanie. Okay. So if you have instructors, I'm guessing you're in some sort of school setting. And so they already do have a piece of ownership in obviously making sure their students are getting their schoolwork, they're getting it to them, and then they're getting it back, and they're grading it. But maybe pose an extra challenge to them. People who kind of get off track or seem to be not paying attention or not quite as engaged as you hope are probably just thinking about other things because they're not engaged enough. Remember, like we said, if we're spending 50 hours a week with people and then we're only spending 5, that's 45 hours of what should I do now? So maybe give them a new challenge. So maybe if it's instructors in a classroom setting, say, hey, you don't need to do this, but if you're looking for an extra engagement with your students, maybe you could try and have a Zoom call with everybody, or maybe you could write a letter to every one of your students and send it out to them, because it'd be fun for them to get mail, or maybe set up a pen pal system so they're sending mail to each other, or whatever. I have no idea. I'm not a school class teacher. I'm finding that out abundantly right now. So for those chaos tolerant people who seem like they're disengaging, give them a new piece of the pie, a new project to be working on, to drive them towards that goal. That will help them stay focused on meeting that goal, because chaos tolerant people are quite often very goal oriented. Now, if you have somebody who's completely freaked out and they're disengaging because they feel like the whole world is sort of collapsing on them. So somebody who in the past, maybe you throw a change at them and they're like, yeah, I don't know, can I have some time to think about that? Or what are Bill and Judy doing? Or those people who typically have that kind of reaction to some sort of change or some sort of chaos are probably having a really hard time thinking about how they could have people leaning on them when they feel so uncertain, especially if they're team driven. So give them maybe a pep talk, and also maybe a list of things that you say, like, hey, listen, Susan, every day, let's do this thing. I'll do it with you. Maybe it's in the morning, you get up and you journal how your day was yesterday, or whatever it is. If they're team driven, that will really, and order tolerant stabilizers, that will really help them feel good and move forward. Organizers really like checklists and they like their questions answered. And so if they're disengaging, it's because they think, you know what, I don't have enough information, so whatever, I'll just kind of keep doing my thing. I'm not going to talk to you anymore because you're not helping me. Okay, let's see. Next question. Okay. Ooh, as a firefighter, this model of change is very apparent in the stations. The saying is, what do firefighters want? Change. When do we want it? Never. We're seeing that a lot, and you'll see people kind of all over the place, from still in decline, I can't hear what you're saying, like la la la, I'm sheltering in place and freaking out. It's okay to shelter in place. I'm totally not making fun of those people. My kids haven't left our street in so long. It's like they probably are starting to smell funny. I don't know. So I'm not saying that's bad, but there are people who are like, nope, not listening. All I know is I have to stay here and make sure I have enough toilet paper and hand sanitizer. And then you have people who are like, maybe we could take the numbers and make it say this or do this thing, or maybe we should try this thing or that thing, or maybe we should have Zoom calls 7 times a day, or they have all kinds of ideas. So they're already out in innovation phase. And so as a leader, you can start to sort of think about where people are in that change transition model and then help them where they are. So if they're in decline, they still have questions. If they're in innovation phase, giving them a scope, can't see the bottom, giving them a scope and saying, this is helpful and productive right now. Anything outside of that is not. So yes, change is fascinating. Being transparent, changes are hourly sometimes, exactly, you're going through the waves always. Okay, do you think it's overkill to do a little motivational interviewing to make certain the outcomes are clear? I have to read this again to myself. I think that's a great idea. I think the more you can communicate with people, I'm as I said earlier, I'm self-driven, I'm an independent, and honestly, I could probably go for days without feeling like I needed to talk to somebody for an extended period of time. Like I could communicate through text messages, emails, and get pretty much what I needed and get my point across. And even I'm feeling like I want to talk to somebody about something. And so I think that the more you can communicate with people and say, hey, I just want to make sure we're on the same page. And you can be a little bit self-effacing and say, I just don't know if I'm good at this video thing. And so I just want to make sure, it makes me kind of nervous. So I just want to make sure I'm getting my point across, right? So for people who are maybe in defense mode or they're feeling overwhelmed by all this, and I'm like, oh, I'm really sorry. Nope, just make it about you and say, I want to make sure that we're super clear on what's happening right now, on what our goals are for the business, so we can make sure we stay focused as a group. And another great line to use for anybody in any situation is, unless you don't mean it, is you are super critical to our success right now. You're super important to us right now. We need you. So I want to make sure that I'm giving you every resource that I can, and that I'm being super clear. So yes, I think doing little mini chats with people is great. In addition to that, I would say that, we kind of have a habit, I think, just based on corporate behavior, maybe over time, to schedule meetings and things for an hour. It could be a 5-minute call. Like, think about how you can mimic engagements you have in the office online, right? So if you knew somebody was having a hard time with whatever, maybe they had a parent that passed away. When you would stop in their office to check in on them and say, how you doing? I wanted to make sure that you understood what we talked about in that last meeting, because I know that you got other things on your mind. You would only talk to them for 5 minutes, right? Maybe not even. You wouldn't talk to them for an hour or 20 minutes or 30 minutes. So don't feel like just because Microsoft Outlook or whatever tool you use, G Suite Calendar, shows up and says automatically, would you like to schedule this for half an hour? No, 5-minute calls. That's totally fine. That's totally fine. It's especially fine for those of us who are self-driven. Now, some people, team-driven people, might want to chat longer, and you should plan for that. If you know those people, just so that you can protect your own peace of mind and also your own calendar. Celebrating wins, yes. Well, I'm a fixer, I like to brainstorm, so we have lots of problems to solve, members on the team. How to get past that? Okay, we have lots of problems to solve, and members on the team seem quick to reject ideas, and I don't know how to get past that, especially when I know the idea could work, but it would mean change. Okay, so here's my trick for that. If somebody says, not gonna do it, you say, what solution would you present then? If in the absence of that idea, what solution would you present? And they'll say, well, I would do this, this, and this. And then put that up on the whiteboard or whatever, however you're communicating with people in the chat, and say, how are we going to outline what success looks like in this environment? Sometimes you have to walk them through why their idea might not be good or as complete, in order for them to see the holes. Because in their mind, they've already sorted it all out. But if you're a leader, there might be things that you know that they don't really know or don't understand the way that it needs to be understood. So sometimes you do have to spend the 15 minutes to walk through ideas that aren't great to help them understand why you're making the decisions you're making. Let me make sure I answered all that question. Especially when I know the idea could work, but it would mean change. I think another thing that's probably pretty important to say, we kind of have a habit of sort of songing and dancing, like a little smoke and mirrors about, well, I know this is going to be hard, or there's going to be some change in it and people don't like change, but I'm going to bring attention to this thing over here while I take a picture of the baby. Don't do that. It's not going to help. People are already stressed out enough. So if you try and spring something on them, that's really just going to tick them off. So what I would say is just be really open and say, this is going to require some change, but I think it's really important right now that we think about how are we going to make the best moves and best decisions for this current environment. Another thing you can do is limit the amount of time you talk about each thing that you're working on. And so say, okay, we're going to talk about this for 20 minutes. and at the end of that, and kind of in the sense of it being a Kaizen, you can say, we are going to have a decision at the end of this. So I think that there are some things also that as leaders, we need to close the gate on. So if you know that there's something that you are not going to do, or you would not be comfortable with, just say, we are not doing said thing. It's not going to happen. I'm not comfortable with that. And maybe you of course, should share all the reasons you're not comfortable with it, unless you can't, because it's business confidential. Then you say, I can't share with you why I'm not comfortable with that, but we are not doing it. Or we're not doing it because, right? So there are some things that you just need to say to people, you know what, that's not something we're doing. People, when they're uncertain, no matter their culture type, people like to push limits, because they want to feel like they're pushing limits, so they feel like there's something that they can control in a way that they want to be able to control it. And that makes us feel like we should give them the opportunity to speak and do whatever they want. And that's good to a point, until we as leaders need to make good decisions for our business and for our clients, patients, customers, whatever they are. And so a lot of times what people are looking for are limits, and we're trying to expand it so that they don't have limits. It's not what they're looking for. Accountability and empathy, being married together, is really about giving people a scope to operate in. Here's where we're at. This is where we're operating. You can provide me suggestions in that space or not, and you can ask me any questions about that space or not. So that's important. Okay. Oh, thanks, Josh. For those of us who answer vertically, what can we do to assist our leader? How can we make ourselves valuable during this time? Answer vertically. Lynn, I think what you mean is you are not a leader in your organization. If you're still on, will you give me a air high five? Yes, that's what I mean. Mid-level manager. Okay, that's what I thought. Great question. So if you are a mid-level manager, you are constantly playing 2 games of ping pong with the employees who report to you, and then the management team or supervisor who you report to. So times of change or crisis or chaos are extra fun for you. First, I will say, I have argued for many, many years that in fact, being a mid-level manager is probably one of the hardest positions in an organization. So kudos to you, hang in there. I bet you're doing a bang up job, even if you don't feel like it. So your question is, what can we do to assist our leader? How can we make ourselves valuable during this time? I think the thing that almost any leader, good leader worth their salt, would say would be helpful coming from their direct line is someone to keep sort of their finger on the pulse of what's going on with the people in the organization, and relay that back to your leadership, because your folks are more comfortable probably talking to you. In some ways, yes, in some ways, no, I know that, but are more comfortable talking to you than they would be to go talk to a CEO or whoever is the level above you. And so, and talk to you in a different way than they would talk to them, right? So if a CEO comes in and they say, hey, how's everybody doing? This is some crazy stuff we got going on. People are like, yeah, it's great, Bill, it's fine, thanks. Even if they're feeling comfortable, they're still like, I don't know, you're the CEO, I'm not gonna say the things. If you walk into their office and you say, how you doing today? Are you feeling okay? They're going to have a different answer for you. So I would say you have a better opportunity than your leadership to really know how people are feeling. And I think the thing that's the most helpful for leaders, even when they might seem like they don't want it, or like maybe they think you're not right, is to really, really push the envelope on, hey, listen, this is how our people are feeling. You know, like maybe they're over planning and saying, oh my gosh, our people are so freaked out. And you're like, you know, actually, they're not too freaked out. They're handling it pretty well. Here are the questions they have. Or maybe people are super freaked out and your leadership is like, you know, everybody forge on, we have to get through this, which is probably true. But still, you know, it's like, well, okay, yes, we do. But the back half of the ship is already sinking and we're taking on water. And so what should we do about that? Let's stop a minute and talk about that. So the whole ship doesn't sink as far as culture and attitude. So I think really listening to what your workforce is doing and relaying that to your leadership is really helpful to them. Being able to do that in a very succinct way, provide them that information in terms of like actual questions that people have, not just yes, they're nervous or no, they're not, but here are the things that people are asking about. That's really helpful to your leadership. And I think honestly, like doing your best to maintain a positive attitude and don't trash talk the leader's decisions. And if you got colleagues that are mid-level managers trash talking the leader's decisions, shut it down. That does nothing for an organization, not for that individual who does it, not for the people who are rah-rahing behind them and saying, yeah, they're treating us poorly or whatever. I mean, unless you're really treating people bad. But support your leaders. Even if you might not agree wholeheartedly with their decisions, whatever actually comes out as a result of whatever meetings you say, this is where we're going as a company. You can ask me any questions you want to about it. I will be happy to relay your questions back to our leadership team. This is how we're doing it, and move on with positive language, because starting or engaging in any of that backbiting conversation from a point of leadership will destroy your culture. And because of what's going on in the world right now, we cannot afford to do that. You just can't. There's no coming back from that. Okay, I think that was the last question. We have 3 minutes left. If anyone has any questions, I will sit here and look strange and be quiet for like 30 seconds. And then if I don't get any more questions, we'll be done. If you have more questions later that you think of, I have a Facebook page. We have Rose Group Facebook page. I have a phone, an email address. All of our contact information is on our website, rosegroupintl.com. So feel free to reach out to me if you have any more questions, or if any of this made you think about something else and you're like, man, I wish I would have asked this question. Just look me up. I'll be happy to have a conversation with you about it. I'll even get on a video conference with you. Oh, good. I'm so glad that you guys find this helpful. So glad. That means that me speaking for an hour at a time was worth it. And putting on the makeup and all the things. So I'd also like to say that my kids were completely silent for a full hour and I didn't hear one of my dogs bark, which was a miracle. Okay, I'm going to share with you the end. Thanks for tuning in today. Don't forget to check Elevate Rapid City's Facebook page for upcoming webinars, and you can find previous webinars on the Elevate Rapid City YouTube channel. Stay healthy and safe, and the message from Meg is always, don't like anything.